Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Community Talk Show. I'm your host, Mohammed Amin. And in the next half an hour, we will be discussing, we're just trying to connect with our online guest. And we will be discussing the issue of the local authority. And hopefully, we should be able to discuss the issue with a sitting councillor. Assalamu alaikum, Councillor Saab.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome to the Community Talk Show, Ayub Saab. I've been following your reports on social media. Mashallah, you've been very active as part of the local authority. And one of the things we do on our Community Talk Show is bring the local issues, local concerns. One of the main concerns we have is there's various statements coming out of the local authority. Some are media representatives, some are just hypes. And I appreciate, I've seen your social media discussion in the chamber this week. But before I go on to that, and before I even talk about the section 114, can you please just enlighten our listeners, the local authority, as we see as the local authority, Birmingham City Council, provides essential services for the community. And I've looked on all the various websites and links, and I cannot find anything specific. So can you please just give us a summary of what local services the authority provides to the residents of Birmingham?
Well, first of all, good evening to you and to your listeners. I think it's important to convey whatever limited information we have about the current scenario that Birmingham City Council finds itself in and where we are going to be heading very, very imminently in terms of the way forward. So local services encapsulates quite a large variety of services. So, for example, refuse collection. To some, that may not be important. To others, it's very important. We have social care, another area which social services in the City Council provide care and support for vulnerable children, vulnerable adults. That's another essential service. Libraries, that's an important service that is provided. Some more important in certain parts of Birmingham, not so important in others, but there is such a wide remit of services that the council provides. And the list is obviously a very long list. But ultimately, I suspect most Birmingham citizens don't really understand what it means when a council says it's bankrupt. Does it mean that everything just closes down? What sort of services will be hit? What's going to happen in order for the council to raise finances? And this is uncharted territory for Birmingham because Birmingham is the largest council in Europe. It has a population of just north of 1.1 million. It is the youngest city in terms of age. It is a city that has a budget of just in excess of £3 billion per annum. And so when you have a city which is obviously the largest city in Europe, and all of a sudden it talks about bankruptcy, clearly that's going to worry a lot of citizens. I think, it's not only uncharted territory for citizens, but for politicians alike, because most politicians will not know what the future means in Birmingham. And the simple reason for that is because there is no decision, no real proposal. And at this moment in time, it's essentially, how are we going to raise this money? in order to pay for the equal pay liability. And the problem that we've had, and I know that, this can become very politicized because as a Lib Dem councillor, naturally, it's my role and responsibility to hold, any other political party responsible when they are in local government. And that's natural, that's politics. The opposition parties get to raise issues. The opposition party is there when they recognize failings. And it's the Liberal Democrats and obviously we, along with Conservatives, are not in control at Birmingham. We are backbenchers. And it's our job to make sure that we communicate this information to the community to say that, look, this is an enormous failure by Birmingham City Council's administration, which is Labour. And so the electorate need to understand that when you put certain politicians in power, they must be held accountable. They must be responsible. They are your custodians of your finances. And if there's mismanagement or inaction or negligence, then that should reflect at the ballot polls in the following election. That's how politics works. And so at this moment in time, there is mixed messages. Some may be quite frightening. We've heard council tax being increased, business rates being increased. And naturally, people will be concerned. And certainly in inner city areas where people are struggling, the cost of living, a lot of families on the breadline, many families eating hand to mouth. And if you're burdened with additional liabilities such as council tax, and if you're running small businesses and all of a sudden where there was dispensation for your business, all of a sudden there's a bill that comes in your letterbox, that's an extra burden.
Councillor Ayub Khan, you're the sitting councillor for the Liberal Democrats in the Aston ward of Birmingham. A fairly deprived ward in the city of Birmingham. Most of inner city wards historically have not had the infrastructure, not had the extra resources to meet the needs of the community. What are your residents saying to you of the issue?
Well, I mean, at this moment in time, I suspect, I have to concede. Naturally, one would expect me to concede that Aston is a very deprived ward. Most inner city areas are. They have the highest deprivation levels. They have poor academic results for especially young boys, high crime rates, high antisocial behaviours. And so we probably tick all of the boxes when it comes to deprivation. And so to an extent, a community that has so many issues becomes somewhat desensitized. And so whilst people are talking about this bankruptcy, nobody really can feel it's not tangible. The impact is not tangible yet. And that's because the essential services are hopefully going to continue to be delivered. But that's in the short term. What needs to be addressed is how is the council going to eventually pay between, I think it's £750 million, anywhere up to £1.15 billion. Where is it going to raise that money from? And how is it going to deal with this debt? And what does it actually mean in terms of the services that the residents receive? Now, you've already highlighted deprived wards don't feel, well, certainly the electorate have always, when you go out campaigning, they talk about not getting the same sort of service as some of the affluent areas. The communities feel, and that's one of the reasons why communities become desensitized, because if they feel that there is inaction, the refuse collection, missed collections, it doesn't happen in affluent areas. Why is it happening in inner city areas? These are some of the disparities which the community often, my electorate, will raise with me. And obviously I lodge complaints and try my best endeavours to ensure that, some of the issues are dealt with. But, these communities will naturally feel the impact in the very, very imminent future.
And also, people don't realize that, we've come out of COVID-19. We've hit one of the largest inflation rates in Europe. Interest rates have rocketed to the levels they were the last 3 years. And added this with all the fear of some numbers being branded about in the media about council tax rate rises. It's not a good news story.
Well, it's what many describe as the perfect storm.
Yeah.
It cannot be described in any other way. You've got so much negativity, and it's all happening at the same time. And one of the biggest problems, along with the ones that you've identified, is you only have to pop into your local superstore.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the prices of, the essential commodities.
Yeah.
Even with inflation coming down slightly.
Yeah.
Prices don't seem to be coming down.
No.
And we talk about inner city areas and deprivation, and we talk about inequalities in health. How can a family, and I'm a practicing barrister, so alhamdulillah, I'm grateful because I earn a decent living.
Yeah.
But even when I go into my local shopping centre, and I've got, mashallah, 6 children, so obviously I've got a large family, and so when you go and you do your shopping, it's not a weekly shopping anymore. You shop probably 2-3 times a week.
2-3 times a week, bless you.
And when you look at the fruit section, and I ask myself, how do people afford the cost of apples, for example?
Yeah.
Why are apples so expensive?
Yeah.
Well, apples are homegrown. It's just some of the prices, really confuse me as to why are the prices of home produce so high, and it comes back to the original point: deprived communities which are living on the breadline, living hand to mouth, will naturally feel the brunt of the cost of living crisis and the cost of goods which are spiraling out of control, not coming down. Add that to an increased council tax, that's a further problem, which is going to just simply cause havoc.
And like I said, one of the things we talked about is council tax. Over the last 3-4 years, council tax has never gone down. The local authority has failed to deliver enhanced services. People have said they are delivering these services, but why consistently? We were one of the Commonwealth Games was a flagship. The world saw Birmingham in a state that nobody dreamed of. We delivered a fantastic Commonwealth. There's some serious bit of investment went into the likes of the infrastructure, road infrastructure around Perry-Barr, the Alexandria Stadium. Why did this issue not be brought to people's attention? Have these numbers been hiding all this time then?
Well, this is one of the biggest debates which was open to the floor on Monday. And it was almost a blame game, and that's why when I did my speech, I had to address that particular point, because I think it's politics.
Yeah.
Clearly, you can push the blame on the opposition, and that's natural in politics.
Yeah.
But where it is clearly demonstrated by evidence that the current Labour administration were in the they were completely in the picture.
Yeah.
Back in 2010, when we were in coalition, I was a cabinet member for local services. We had identified this pay grade and equalities issue.
Yeah.
And clearly we went through the process of trying to address it. But we were then kicked out of the coalition government, local government, because the Labour Party managed to secure more votes and they were obviously in control.
Yeah.
So clearly, after 2012, they were in control.
Yeah.
And it's the administration that's in control to ensure that any issues are dealt with promptly. And what we do know is that for 7 years, there was some consultation, which was using the gauge model, looking at how the city council could deal with the inequalities in the pay structures and how the task and finish employees working in that sector, how would that impact other sectors, and all the rest of it is quite complicated. It's not just female employees that have lost out. There are male employees as well. But what we do know is that by 2017, the administration knew about a crisis. They knew that an equal pay crisis was imminent, and they did nothing. And that is the reality of the situation. And even up until the budget that was presented this year, we were misled as councillors. What we were told was that there was the risk associated to equal pay was zero. So it was.
Bless you. This is the other thing I was going to touch on, and you've been more than open and sharing your knowledge. As I said, you were sitting councillor, as you kindly just said, you were sitting councillor, and I thought it was around 2010, which is you just reconfirmed. So the issue was highlighted then, and even at 2017. 6 years ago, they knew this was an underlying problem. When the local authority agrees a budget for the forthcoming year, I'm quite shocked to learn that this, again, we just didn't come out of the wash to say, we've got this pending issue.
Yeah, and that's why the opposition are quite clearly frustrated because, from my point of view, we now know that with the issuing of the Section 140 notice, that essentially means that the council will not balance its budget. It is in financial crisis. It needs exterior involvement, and that's why the commissioner has been appointed by the government. And so the ultimate person which will make a final decision will be the commissioner.
Right.
And so what this Labour administration has done is simply to take away the democratic process away from the community. So as a community representative, I represent the ward of Aston. My sole, I wouldn't say sole, but my prime loyalty would be to my residents.
That's right.
In the way that
that's right. Well, and to be honest, as you said in the beginning, you're a professional barrister. You've got a fantastic job. The last thing you would want to do is go into local government. The only reason why you went into local government is serve the needs of your community. Come on, let's be realistic.
Absolutely. And so I was there to champion certain aspects. That's one of the reasons why I came back into politics last year. One of the agendas that I was working on was the bereavement and coronial services. I felt that the community. I mean, when you look at our makeup, it's not just the Muslim community.
That's right.
Also applies. But and I felt that with the council and the budget that we have, and the level of service in the bereavement and coronial services had begun to drop to a point where so many people were complaining. So many residents, whichever funeral I attended, they were complaining and saying that not enough is being done. So you come with passion, with enthusiasm to deliver something for the community. And then when you think about it, we were only looking for an additional £2 to £3 million per year to make that service work for the community. So an extra £2 to £3 million would have made the registration, the coronial, the scanning, all of that would have been dealt with. When you look at that, that's $2 to $3 million out of a £3 billion budget that we have is nothing. And so you have this agenda, you want to drive this agenda through. And unfortunately now we haven't got any opportunity to address an important matter which impacts so many people, not just in Aston but across Birmingham. And I feel frustrated that a commissioner will make decisions for the people now.
Yeah.
And so we essentially, as councillors, will be no different to the monarchy. The parliamentarians make
parliamentarians make the decisions, and monarchy just tick the boxes. And effectively, you were effectively democratically elected to serve the needs of your community. So that decision has been taken out of your hands now through no choice of your own, especially.
That's right, and that's why I say, and I've always said that the people need to be held to account.
Yeah.
Now, if this was something on a national scale, we've all seen what happens to politicians when there's enormous failure such as this.
Yeah.
Heads roll. Yeah. And it's not just politicians, but it's also senior officers, because senior officers are responsible for drafting a budget.
Yeah.
And so why was there a zero risk attached to something which was obviously not a zero risk?
Yeah.
And so nationally, when you look at something like that, when somebody makes a bad decision or there's inaction, there's responsibility and accountability.
Yeah.
And so what I was, advocating at the last council meeting is, look, you've brought us into this position. There's no point you now saying, well, the government's taken £1 billion away from Birmingham City Council over the last 10 years, and if that didn't happen, that's just nonsense.
That's irrelevant, because every year you set a budget, and
that's right.
You do a risk analysis, and that budget should reflect the risk analysis with the services that you need to deliver.
And the point is that you pick any household.
Yeah.
Any household.
Yeah.
And if you say to this household that, if the head of the household if it's a couple with 5 children, let's say, or 3 children,
yeah,
and the couple are working, they've reduced hours from their employees, so they're not going to bring as much money into the household.
Yeah.
They can't go and demand extra money from their employer to say, well, actually, I've got X, Y, and Z, and you need to pay me extra. They will have to work within their budget.
That's right.
And it's no different. So, for example, they may say, okay, children, no more Netflix, because we're going to have to tighten our purse.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to have, you can't have school meals every day. We're going to have to make packed meals. They will have to drive up strategies in order to ensure that they are working within their budget. Just like every organization, they would have to ensure that they don't just simply cry and say, well, you haven't given us enough. You have to deal with what you have. And that's why budgets are set. So, any council which is run by any political party will have to work within the budget that they have, and they have to show fiscal discipline.
Yeah. And so, when the budget was set for Birmingham City Council last year, what happened with that fiscal discipline?
Well, clearly, the budget itself, there's some suggestion that it was an illegal budget. The councillors were misled. But be that as it may, we are naturally going to see a revised budget of some sort. It'll be put through council in October, and we'll have to see what the commissioner's role is.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what proposals are forthcoming.
Yeah.
The chief executive said that there were a number of areas where they were looking at asset capital sales.
Yeah.
So they're looking at selling, land and property which belong to Birmingham citizens.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's going to be sold. There's been reports about Birmingham Airport, the shareholding that we have in Birmingham Airport.
Yeah.
There's, I think, 7,500 acres of land which Birmingham City Council owns. Then you've got historic buildings such as
Aston Hall, yeah. Just around the corner from where you are, yeah.
Absolutely. And so, these are some of the things that will be reviewed. But in addition to that, they're going to look at making services more efficient. Well, I asked myself, how can you make a service more efficient if you're already running on a bare skeleton? There's no flesh. So, where you've got, for example, I often come out my front door in Aston and I see 2 children which have learning disabilities being looked after by care workers. And there's 4 care workers with two children. which take them around Aston into the park and so forth. And I asked myself, oh, does an efficient service mean that those 4 adults which look after those 2 children will be reduced to 2 adults? And if that happens, those 2 children are not going to be taken out because, there's going to be rules and regulations and statutory regulations which mean that a child can't go out without the supervision of 2 adults.
Supervision, yeah.
And so, where does it stop? How will it be dealt with is something that we're going to have to learn as time progresses. But it's going to be done. And I say to the electorate that when you look at this mess, then you need to hold politicians to account. The people that are in control, the people that are in the local administration. And how do you do that? Well, A, you can raise your voice about services and the inequalities.
Yeah.
But B, more significantly, you deal with it in the ballot box.
Councillor Yukon, question to you. If I was a director of a business and I declared bankruptcy, then appreciate you're a man of the law. Under company law, I will not be able to be a director of another company. So if I'm in position and I'm sitting as a director of my company, and for whatever reason my business is insolvent and I can't meet my statutory services that I've charged customers for, what happens to these councillors who sit on these cabinets and these scrutiny committees and what have you? Do you think there should be some type of change in the legislation to allow these people to carry on?
Well, it's probably a little more worrying than that, actually, because you're absolutely right. I mean, you've given a good analogy. If you have a director of a company, and clearly companies go bust all the time. And for example, you could be running a company, all of a sudden the sale don't pick up, you've invested money in stock, and you have no alternative but to declare bankruptcy. That's one thing. And obviously that will go on your record. But if there's mismanagement, that's a complete different
that's another complete separate issue. And
if it misled other shareholders, that becomes very criminal.
That's true.
And whilst there is a certain degree of protection for elected councillors, but if it transpired that what they have done, and there will be an internal inquiry, we've heard about that, local inquiry, which will look at what took place, what discussion had taken place, what documentation was presented, what email correspondence. Once that internal investigation is conducted, if there is a conclusion that the executive acted unlawfully, then these councillors, which were part of the administration, could potentially be personally liable. And I'd hate to think what that would mean, because it could be quite serious.
And this is the point that I was trying to raise, is people don't realise, going back to my council tax, if my council tax go up, my salary will not go up. I have to find resources to pay for that increase in council tax. But these members of the scrutiny committee, the elected members, they are still getting their allowances and salaries and what have you. So they are not affected for mismanagement and making these inappropriate decisions. So that's why, every man in the street is asking these type of questions out in the community, to see, and it's obviously a concern for the community.
It is, and that's why having this local inquiry as to precisely what is taking place is obviously important, because you will identify who's at fault, and that naturally has its ramifications. So, I think to say that the administration will get away without repercussions, I think it would be naive. I think when there is this internal inquiry, internal local inquiry, I'm confident that we'll get to the bottom of it. And wherever the responsibility lies, I'm sure there will be action. But at present, we have the current Labour Party executive not holding responsibility for what's taken place. We've had half a apology from the council who was very reluctant to give that apology to start off. But I'm confident that the local bodies will identify all the answers to questions that President will have.
And finally, how is your party, obviously Councillor Ayub Khan, you are elected member of the Liberal Democrat Party for the Aston ward. How is your party working towards some type of a working plan or some type of a resolution? Or is it still initial stages where you're trying to identify the actual problem?
Well, that's a very good question. As a group, we've had a very short discussion about the types of things that we want to reflect upon. And of course, not because it's not important, but because we do know A, the scale of the problem. B, because of this new IT system, which once again is an epic failure by the Labour administration. It was meant to cost us £18 million. When I say us, I'm talking about the residents of Birmingham. The electorate of Birmingham. It was meant to cost us £18 million.
Yeah.
It was meant to be the state-of-the-art IT system.
Yeah.
Drawing, enormous fees. The invoices were paid in time. It worked out all of the finances. So it was meant to be a software that would deal with all of the city council finances.
Yeah.
Well, that's now costing us £100 million, so 5 times more than what it was. And so that's another enormous failure by this administration. And I come back to the point that politicians need to be held accountable. They don't have a carte blanche. They are simply untouchable.
Yeah.
They are custodians.
Yeah.
They have a responsibility. The executive in particular has a responsibility to the whole of Birmingham.
Yeah.
And wider. And where you have mismanagement or you have inaction, omission, whatever you want to call it, they should be bold enough to take responsibility and be have the humility to actually apologize, and they should reflect on their own position.
And I didn't want to touch the computer system, but because you've just raised a valid point there, a computer system would cost £15 million, and when you start spending 10 million, 12 million, 15 million, 18 million, 20 million. Alarm bells should have started ringing then, not 5 times more the expenditure to 100 million. And even now it's still not working.
Well, that's right. And that's where, unfortunately, that's where the other problem arises. I mean, you ask the person a question, as a different group, what are you going to think about it? And so in order for us to be in a position to have a plan, we need to first understand how big of a problem we have. So we don't even know what we have in reserves because the computer system that works that out is not working.
It's not working properly.
So we don't even know what we owe other organizations, third-party organizations that we've procured services from. We don't know how much we owe them. We don't know
how much money is owed to you as well?
How much money is coming in? Because the IT system which we relied upon has simply failed. And so one can only start sitting down to devise an action plan. And it's just a potential action plan because, as I said before, the commissioner comes in to ultimately, I'm sure there'll be some, as I've said before, discussions around sort of things that we can do to put this city council back on track. But let's assume for a moment that the commissioner states that we're going to go to a monthly refuse collection. I know that may be an extreme example, but let's assume for a moment he says monthly refuse collection will save X amount of hundreds of millions. And this is something that must be done. And as a local council of Aston, I can turn around and say, well, hold on 1 second. We have an enormous fly tipping problem in Aston. Our recycling levels are not as great as we want them to be. And so that would have a drastic impact on the street scene in places like Aston. And the commissioner would simply say, well, tough. We're not going to factor in what you think is important. That's my decision. And so it's a very difficult predicament because it's almost going to be like a dictatorship with a bit of discussion. And like I said, even that's a grey area because we just don't know what the parameters are. So, as I say, these sort of things will develop as time progresses. But raising £1 billion when you're already struggling with your expenditure of $3 billion is not an easy ask.
So one of the points, I'm just coming to wrap up our little conversation. Apologies, I'm extended a little bit more than the allocated time that we had. But one of the things that you mentioned when we opened this conversation about the residents of inner city Birmingham and the residents of Birmingham are asking questions out in the community, asking questions. Your residents are asking questions, and that decision that you make at the ballot box. If somebody says to you now, what is your opinion of the current controlling group at Birmingham City Council in the way they've led their finances over the last 12 years?
Well, I mean, naturally, as the opposition, I'm bound to say that there's been mismanagement. I'm bound to say that. But what I encourage people to do is not to rely on just what politicians say, because opposition parties will always accuse and allege and attack the current ruling party. That's natural politics. But I would encourage people to keep a close eye on some of the factual evidence that's bound to come out, and then to assess and to then ask those pertinent questions. If this administration knew about this problem in 2017, why did they not deal with it? Why did they not put an action plan? Why was this delay of 5 years? How did they brush such an important topic to one side? Why are female workers predominantly and others which have been treated unfairly with not an equivalent amount of income as others in similar positions? Why was this disparity? And if all of these things are questions that lie at the doorstep of this Labour administration, then they must really reflect on how they vote in the next local election.
Councillor Ayub, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Bless you. You're a working barrister and you have a family to look after as well. As I said, I'm very grateful that you've given up your time this evening, and maybe we'll follow up this story on another occasion. But once again, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, pleasure.
There you are, listeners. Thank you very much for your listening to this program today. Today's program is a special program with the sitting councillor, who is Councillor Ayub Khan from the Aston ward of Birmingham, and Councillor Ayub Khan actually is a practicing barrister as well, so that's his profession. And we wanted to bring to you the issues and the concerns of what the residents have been asking us, and this is what's happening out there in the community. My request goes out to the Conservative Party councillors and the sitting Labour Party councillors. If you'd like to come on to the community talk show, you're more than welcome to come on live. We can do a live feed in. We can do a live here in the studio. And these are the questions these electorates who have voted the local authority in, and this is what they are asking. So you need to share this information with them. And at the end of the day, it's important that the community, the electorate, which has voted you as the representative, as Councillor Ayub Khan has said, you're not the untouchable. Within reason, there will be another election in a couple of years' time, and these issues and concerns, people do remember them. So please share anything that you want to on this platform, and that's the whole idea of this community talk show. They are for the benefit of the community, for the community, and run by volunteers within the community. Moving on, a couple of things before I finish off my show this evening. I'd like to bring to your attention that as we are now in autumnal weather here in the great city of Birmingham, weather this evening, it's really bad. It's been heavy rain most evening, and throughout the day we've had outbursts of rain. There's further heavy rain on its way with Storm Agnes anytime between now and midnight. So it's like to batten down the hatches really before the heavy rainfall, and hopefully by tomorrow it should have passed us. But more importantly, more and more information is coming out from Public Health Birmingham, and these are the NHS specialist, NHS Public Health, who take care of the public health in Birmingham. More and more people are picking up this variant virus. Some of it is this seasonal colds and flu virus, and those of gentlemen out there who would understand when I say man flu, there's a lot of this still happening, and there is also an element of COVID-19 variant. A variant of COVID-19 is out and about in the community, and whilst there's no official statistics or what have you, the actual statistics come when individuals go to hospital, go to A&E, and that data feeds into the system. And sometimes when this data feeds into the system, because there's no official reporting portal or anything like that, it could take anything between 4 and 6 weeks to come through to the system. But initial concerns are that it is on the rise, and as we go into October with Halloween, with Bonfire Night, and with events on in the community, we need to make sure that we keep our distance with regards to hugging individuals, shaking of hands, and making sure you wash your hands frequently. Also, anybody who is suffering from long-term illness and over the age of 55 with a serious medical condition, a long-lasting medical condition, they need to contact their family practitioner, doctor, GP, nurse. Also, anybody over the age of 65 also needs to contact their doctor, GP, and nurse. And the reason for this is some people will be entitled for influenza vaccines. These are available out in the community from your doctor. And also the COVID-19 booster vaccines are now available in the community as well. And again, on Radio Aapke Awaaz, we give you factual information. We always guide you back to your medical professional, whether it's your nurse at the practice or health visitor or your doctor, because they look at your medical records, they look at your medical history, they are there to make that informed decision. And please take time and book an appointment. And I know how difficult it is to try and book an appointment to see your doctor for a minor ailments, but you need to persevere and be persistent with trying to get an appointment. And some medical practices do offer specific slots for minor ailments and specific over the telephone consultations, and some offer specific slots where you can have these appointments. Need to make sure that you take advantage of these, because as we go into late autumn, early winter, and that's like what, two months now maximum before we're in the midst of winter in early December. You need to make sure that you are boosted with these vaccines, because the vaccines are there to protect you. And as we've learned through the COVID-19 pandemic, most vaccines, depending on your body, have a retention rate of 3 to 6 months. And this is the reason why the government is offering these boosters, and they are aiming to offer these boosters to the elderly, the people who have chronic illness and who are suffering. And the idea is to protect them. Anybody who's suffers from an asthmatic disease, respiratory disease, they know how difficult it is when we have cold, frosty mornings. And this is the reason why it is recommended that these individuals have these type of influenza vaccines or COVID-19 booster vaccines. As always, Radio Aapke Awaaz is here for your community programs, community entertainment, and community factual information shows. You can contact us on 07944 808 141. You can listen to us live on www.aapkeawaaz.co.uk. You can listen to us on most social medias, YouTube, Facebook, Radio Garden app, Hindi radio app, and also the Aapke Awaaz app. And if you would like us to cover any specific topics in the forthcoming weeks, please drop me a line, and we will more than welcome try and accommodate you subject to our schedules. And those of you who have been listening to me this evening, very, very grateful for you to take your time out. Auntie Firdaus Usmani, thank you very much for listening into my program. My program today has been in English, and we've been trying to find out some basic factual information about the local authority and what is the concern. Mariana, thank you very much for listening into my program. All of it was in English today, and hope you've learned something today as well. Awais Mansoor, thank you very much for listening into my program. If there's at any one time you would like to come on the program, more than welcome to cover any particular topic, any areas of concern that we can deliver a better service as volunteers to the community. Gladly, this is your platform, Radio Aapke Awaaz. As always, this is why our Director Ikram Mirza Sahab has set this up for the benefit of our community. And appreciate we're going through a difficult time. Appreciate it's going to be a rocky road ahead with what Councillor Ayub Khan has said. Some of these things we can't control. However, there are other things that we can control. We can control COVID-19, spread of COVID-19. We can control spread of influenza virus. And more importantly, use the tools that we have. Use Teams, FaceTime, chat, speak to people online. You don't have to physically visit people. Obviously, it's important to visit the elderly, and please keep your distance when you're visiting the elderly. Wash your hands, put your masks on, because, it's difficult in this current climate. Those of you who are listening to my program from the professional community, if there's any particular topic that you would think that's valuable and important for our listeners, please let me know, and we will gladly cover them in our forthcoming programs. We try and cover local issues, local concerns, but if there's anything that anybody would like to cover. If somebody wants to do a bit of volunteering, somebody wants to do a volunteering litter picking, somebody wants to do a volunteering in the community, again, we can put you in touch with people. And this is what it's all about. It's time to share some of your skills and abilities. And at the end of the day, we all do this for the Almighty, and the Almighty will see us delivering that generosity. And who knows, as the Islamic faith says, whilst we embrace all faiths, the Islamic faith says, who knows, the Almighty maybe takes one of your good deeds and that will be your route into forgiveness. So this is why it's important to share information, share your knowledge with the community. And at the end of the day, if the members of the community can take some advantage of that, at the end of the day, we've done our bit for the community. So once again, thank you very much for listening into my program. I'm always pleased to get feedback when I'm out and about in the community. I may make mistakes, and a lot of these programs, as you probably gather, I don't prepare for them. They're all off the cuff, and I try and put myself in the shoes of you, the listeners, and if there's any questions that you put to me, I always put them to our guests, and I always make sure that we have a balanced approach when having these discussions, have an educational session, and who knows, you will learn something. If there's any other areas you would like me to cover, as always, our number is 07944 808 141. Please drop me a line and we will cover them on the forthcoming shows. My programs are normally on a Wednesday evening between 8 and 9. Some Wednesdays when I don't have any slots or work commitments, I'm not available, but generally between 8 and 9 p.m. on a Wednesday evening. Until next time, look after yourself. Make sure you contact your elderly relatives. If you can't visit them, not a problem. Give them a ring. Try and offer to get some shopping in for them, because the next few months are a bit cold. The elderly need to stay in warmth, and try not to mix too much with people, especially at community events and weddings, and there's various entertainment evenings, social gatherings, because it's a way of trying to curb yourself and protect yourself, and also protect different elderly people as well. Thank you very much, and until the next time, we will cover it on our future shows. Once again, speak to you inshallah next week. Take care. Khuda Hafiz.